What dost thou say? Wilt thou not join us? Oh, yes, I believe we would suit thee well. I am very glad. And now thou art one of us. Let us establish a covenant. If mine senses reveal intruders, I will summon thee. Fend them off, sir. I beseech only this. I shall summon others who will, by their honor, work tirelessly with thee. Thou shalt receive great reward, and whatsoever ye shall pillage will be thine own. A true agreement, not so? But thou must heed the golden rule. The clan is thine own family. To thine kinsmen forever stay true. Darest not in any attempt to double-cross. Have no doubt, such wretchedness never will we tolerate.
I've heard all about you. I'm Shiva of the East, captain of the brigade. Let's teach you the clan basics now, as there's no time to chat in the midst of fighting. Except there is little in the form of rules, you hear? Fight and hunt as you like. Whoever's fastest gets the prey. That's the way we do it. Only, don't forget what Alvina said. Traitors aren't given a second chance, for any reason. That's about it then. Don't worry. It's a good old time, isn't it? Great to have you with us. Good hunting to you.
What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, we're back at it in the forest, and this is going to be the first part of a 3-part series that I like the title, Whoever's the Fastest Gets the Prey. Now, I intentionally included the dialogue from both Alvina and Shiva of the East so that there would be no misunderstanding as to what this is talking about. Now, why do I say that? Shout out to Fox from Foxio Games. Now, good old Fox has a video, and I know I've kind of talked about this in the past, but the thing is, I've never really paid attention to the dialogue, right? I never really paid attention to what Alvina said, nor did I really pay attention to what Shiva said. You know, I mean, because I'm not really into the story, I'm not into the lore, I'm basically into PvP. Now, I did know forest hunters were here to protect the forest, I mean, in general, but I never really paid attention to the dialogue. So I figured that I would take the time to not only read and listen to it myself, but to have you guys read and listen to it. And hopefully, we can kind of get some understanding on this thing. Now, after listening to and reading the dialogue, my opinions are kind of changing with regard to so-called ganking in the forest. Now, if you listen to what Alvina is saying, she is basically talking about her summoning you whenever her senses lets her know that there are trespassers in the forest. Right? And that your job is to rid the forest of these trespassers. So this is why you're being summoned. You put the ring on. Whenever Alvina senses that there's trespassers here, you'll be summoned to get rid of them at all costs. So she basically tells you what your job is. When you listen to Shiva's dialogue, he basically outlines what the rules are, for which he says there are little rules with regard to forest hunting? And actually, why should there be rules when your job is to get rid of people who do not belong here? So let's think about this idea of gankers. Now, like I said before, in the past, without really paying attention to the dialogue, I was of the opinion that basically anyone who's 2v1ing because they are either unwilling or unable to fight on their own is basically a ganker. Now, to a degree, that still includes forest hunters. To a degree. Let me explain why I say to a degree. One thing you guys will notice about me, to the extent that I am forest hunting, I will engage whether I am by myself or not. If I'm the first forest hunter and another forest hunter arrives, I will engage. If I'm a lone forest hunter, I'm going to engage. Or if there was a forest hunter there and I'm responding, I will engage. Because my job is to get rid of trespassers. Flat out. Despite the situation, whether I'm by myself or there's someone else there, my job is to engage. So, if my job is to protect the forest, how can I really be a ganker? Here's the only way that I can see a forest hunter as being a ganker. And I'm pretty sure you guys have seen the type. There's the type of forest hunter like me that will engage regardless. Number one, because it's fun. Well, actually, let me take that back. Number one, because it's our job to. But number two, it's very exciting, in my personal opinion, to fight in 2v1 situations. Why? Because it's more challenging. It's extremely exciting. I've said on a number of videos that if you guys want to have fun, participate in random invasions. If you guys want to improve your tactics, try a few formal matchups. Because when you're engaging in formal matchups, you kind of approach them differently. Whereas in random invasions, your job is to hurry up and kill the host. When you're doing formal matchups, well, actually, I can't speak for everybody. I'll say at least for myself. When I'm engaging in formal matchups, my goal is to improve in my tactics. So in other words, am I as aggressive during formal matchups as I am during random invasions? No. Do I kind of pay attention to how many backstabs I am doing during formal matchups? Yeah, I pay more attention to that because the goal is not necessarily to hurry up and kill. It's kind of like limitations that I place on myself because I have the deliberate intent to improve my tactics. Whereas when I am, forest hunting or participating in random invasions, I have the deliberate intent to kill the host. So, like I was saying, can a forest hunter be a ganker? Here is the only exception, in my personal opinion, where a forest hunter can be a ganker. When you run into one of those guys that refuse to fight on their own, right? Either they're unwilling or unable. They just flat out refuse to fight on their own despite being tasked with protecting the forest. I will call them a ganker. But if you're in one of these guys who, they're just kind of like me, they'll fight regardless of the situation because that's what they're supposed to do. And if they just so happen to be in the 2v1, then they just so happen to be in the 2v1. But it's not one of these deliberate things where it's like, well, I'm only going to fight when backup is here. That's the only time where I will classify a forest hunter as a ganker. But our job is basically to police the forest. You guys heard and read the dialogue from Alvina, and you heard and read the dialogue from Shiva of the East. This is our job. Right? We don't have we're not deliberately just sitting here and waiting on people. No, we have the ring on and we're basically waiting to be summoned. Now, These hosts don't belong here. This is not their forest. There is no other covenant out there where you are tasked with protecting something. Now, someone may make the argument, well, as a Dark Moon Blade, you have a task. Well, that task is different. You're not, protecting anything. As a Dark Moon Blade, you're basically a spirit of vengeance. That's all you are. In other words, those who have committed sin in the book of the guilty, you are to get vengeance against them. So you're not protecting an area. You're just seeking vengeance against those in the book of the guilty. This is the only covenant that I can think of off the top of my head where you are tasked with protecting an area. So, other than the type of player that I just talked about, I don't see how a Force Hunter can gank. The 2v1 is basically us protecting the forest. And this is why Shiva said there are little to no rules. And whoever is the fastest gets the prey. And that's why I thought that would be a groovy title for the 3-part series. So think about it. These guys don't belong here. Right? These guys do not belong here. They're trespassers. So they are the real gankers, in my personal opinion. They have the deliberate intent to just sit here as trespassers and basically say, you guys want us out of here, then you make us get out. That's basically what they're doing. Right? Because there's no other reason other than getting souls or basically just being malicious with camping hunters for them to be here. And that's the same with every other area. And this is what differentiates Force Hunters from any other 2v1 situation. Case in point, in the kiln you have gankers. Why do I call them gankers? Basically because, that's not their area. They have the deliberate intent to basically wait for summons and just attack them. It's deliberate, right? They have no claim to the kiln. Those in the undead burg, they have no claim to the burg. And because they don't have a claim to the burg, they are gankers. The people who are sitting here in the forest, they don't have a claim to the forest. They're gankers. They're just basically sitting here and waiting on people. Us, on the other hand, we're policing the area. And this is our vow. And a real Force Hunter will engage whether they're by themselves or whether they are not by themselves. And this is the difference, in my personal opinion, between a ganker and a Force Hunter. So, I like to hear a lot of you guys' comments. Because, like I said, in the past, I was kind of the opinion that anyone who basically 2v1s can be a ganker. But like I said before, after paying close attention to that dialogue, I'm kind of changing my opinions on that. So enough about that. I would love to read some of the feedback and comments on that perspective. I'm pretty sure some of you will disagree, and perhaps some of you will even agree on what I just talked about. But like I said before you come up with your comments and formulate your opinions, just make sure that you pay close attention to that opening dialogue. Right? Don't just say based upon what you think is right and not right. Please base it off what is said in the dialogue from both Shiva and Alvina the cat. Alright, so enough about that. Now, before I start really getting into the commentary on the 3-part series, I'd like to offer a thanks and shout out to all of my subscribers for all the kind words and all the comments that was left either on my channel or on PSN. A few weeks ago, I just decided to take a short hiatus. So basically, this is my first series after, I think I took a 3-week break, and I basically needed it. But, after being gone for so long, I basically, fired up the PVR this week. And because basically, this is a build that I just created. I was kind of talking about it with some of the guys on Twitch about some ideas that I had, and this is basically the result. This is my strength mage. Now, some of you guys, I know whenever you see mages, you just automatically associate the Crown of Dusk. Go ahead, actually, I can't even say mages. I'll say any caster build. You almost automatically associate the Crown of Dusk with a caster build. And actually, that was one limitation that I decided to place on myself. Mainly because when you get hit with some of these castings, I mean, depending upon your defenses and how much vitality you have, I mean, you can get one-shotted. But that wasn't my goal. I mean, granted, I did want to use a caster build, but did I always want to one-shot people? No, I didn't. In addition to that, you take a penalty from using the Crown of Dusk. I mean, it's not just you get the huge magic adjustment increase. No, you also lose, you actually are more vulnerable to magic attacks when you wear it. So I said, you know what? I mean, it's bad enough that I'm using the 10 crystallization catalyst and the Manus catalyst, which basically give you a boost on your magics. I really don't want to top all that off with the Crown of Dusk as well. Now, another reason why I decided to use a caster build, and actually for a lot of you guys that are familiar with the channel, you guys will know that in all of my previous forest hunting videos, I basically was only melee. Alright, no castings. Just basically shield and sword, shield and weapon. No castings. Because I think in some cases, a lot of people tend to depend heavily on castings and they ignore the melee. So I figured I'll go ahead and showcase my own variation of how I see a caster should be. Now, I'm saying how I see. I'm not criticizing how other people cast. Because, far too often will you see some kind of person, they'll be a mage, but basically all they do is just sit in one place and hit dark bead like 6 consecutive times. So I wanted to demonstrate that you can basically be a successful mage without spamming the dark bead, or spamming the Wrath of Gods, or spamming something. Because I have a video, I think it's titled No Respect for Forest Hunters, and in that video I specifically talk about the spamming of castings. And it's just so apparent that a lot of these guys are not objective observers or listeners. Because when I specifically talk about the spamming of castings, people too often say, oh, so what are you saying? I'm not supposed to use magics? No, dude. There's a distinct difference between using magics and spamming magics. Think about it. How many times have you guys either been an invader or you have invaded a host, and you'll see them with their little ridiculous Crown of Dusk? And what they do is they basically stand in one place and fire off the dark bead like 5 or 6 consecutive times. No attacks in between, not trying to engage, not trying to do anything, but they just sit there and spam over and over and over again. Dark bead, dark bead, dark bead, dark bead. And then they sit there and give you the, well, what is it? Like they actually did something. Or with their little Crown of Dust, they'll sit there and go, black flame, black flame, black flame, black flame, or great combustion, great combustion. I mean, you guys have seen it. I don't really have to go over it. And that's basically what you see. So I basically wanted to showcase how I, as an individual, not making judgments against other people who like to spam attacks, but, since I talked so much about magic spammers in that previous video, I figured that I would showcase how I would consider the successful use of a mage that employs both melee and castings. And I'm not going to be in one of these situations where I have my fog ring, right? And I'm kind of waiting for the host and his phantom to be preoccupied, and somewhere off into the distance I'm firing off Crystal Soul Spear, inflicting like 1200 damage. You're not going to see that. these guys are going to know that I'm there, and I'm going to be in their face. I will be actively engaging, right? Because that's one thing that I've hate. In the number of times that I've been a host, one thing that I absolutely cannot stand, I mean, it really fires me up, when I'm fighting forest hunters, for which I'm fine with, but you'll have some coward in the background. Basically, he won't even do anything. He'll just stand like, 200 feet away and fire off Crystal Soul Spear and hit you for like 1,200 damage. It's like, come on, dude. I mean, is that really all you can do? You're just going to sit off in the distance, hiding behind your little ring, behind your little fog ring? No. That always fired me off. And they'll just go ahead and spam it like 20 times straight, Soul Spear, Soul Spear, Soul Spear. And then they'll just come behind you with their fog ring and hit you with like several iterations of Dark Bead. So I figured to myself, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and use my own caster build. And this is basically one that I just created. I think I was in the process. And actually, I think I made this Sunday. This past Sunday. And I've been practicing with it all week. Now, this build definitely has its limitations. This build has the lowest vitality that I have out of all of my builds. In addition to that, I am not using the Ring of Favor or Protection. So, I mean, in addition to that, I basically have super low defense. If any of you guys are familiar with the Sorcerer set, you will know that Sorcerer set has extremely poor defensive stats. So, seeing that I have extremely low defensive stats and 1,500 HP, because basically I have 50 in vitality, but 50 in vitality without the Ring of Favor and Protection gives you exactly 1,500 HP. I figured that I would supplement all of that with strength weapons and castings. So I am able to use the Black Knight Great Axe, actually all of the Black Knight weapons, and some of the strength weapons that I tend to like more than others. Right, so basically I'll be using like the Man-Serpent Greatsword, the large club, the Black Knight Great Axe, Black Knight Halberd, obviously, because that's probably my favorite strength weapon out of all, and a few other weapons. Right, so I'm running around here with 1,500 vitality, pretty low defense, with my castings and strength weapons. And actually, although this build does have its limitations, I really like the build. I absolutely love this build. Now, this is currently a level 130, but it didn't have to be a 130. I basically got greedy. Because the original intent was for me to use the Manus Catalyst. And with some of the variations, I wanted to be able to use two weapons, kind of like the Man-Serpent Greatsword, and pair it along with the Gargoyle Halberd, which weighs 16 units. Right, so with the Manus Catalyst already being kind of heavy, I think that's kind of 5 units. I needed more endurance to be able to carry 2 weapons in addition to that. But I mean, you guys will notice in some cases I'm just using the 10 crystallization catalyst. Now I have a series coming up with myself against good old Bruno. Shout out to Bruno. And it's basically a Battle of the Build series wherein I will be using this build against his Gargoyle build. And actually, I think that was a cool build. I know you guys have seen, I know you guys are familiar with the Gargoyles over in the Undead Parish. Alright, and basically he armored himself to look exactly like a gargoyle. I mean, he's got the helm, he's got all the gargoyle weapons, he's using the gargoyle shield, and he's also using pyro. And I think that was really interesting, and I'm pretty sure you guys will enjoy it once I upload it. And basically, you get to see how this build functions in 1v1 matches. And actually, for some reason, I prefer to use this build during random invasions than I do in formal matches. I don't know why, because you would think with having only 1500 vitality that I would probably prefer this during 1v1 matches as opposed to forest hunting, but for some reason it's the exact opposite. But either way it go, I mean, I've done both. I've done random invasions with this build, and I've also done formal matches. But I just really prefer this build during forest hunting. So basically, I think I just might dedicate this build only to forest hunting. I'm not really sure. Because like I said before, you know, I enjoy formals. Let's see, this is the type of forest hunter I don't like. Did you guys notice? He just backed off. Okay, he's going back. Okay, there's another situation where there's a guy, he backs off because he sees that I'm not helping. So I'm like, hold on. No, dude, you get out there and fight on your own. I'm not about to get out there and win your battles. Okay. What is he doing? Okay, so I guess he's going to let me fight. No problem. Oh, so now he's back no more. Come on, dude. You could have just fought that guy by yourself. I mean, seriously? Now I have reason to believe that he's the type of person that I was talking about earlier with regard to being a ganker. Now this person, if you guys notice, he's fighting all by himself. Right? All by himself. That's a real forest hunter. It's not one of these forest hunters who, you know, they only fight when you have backup. This guy was taking on these two guys all by himself. And like I said before, I'm going to engage whether I'm by myself or not. So I really have no compassion for these people because they do not even belong in the forest. But, okay, back to what I was saying. Like I said before, I enjoy random invasions. I love random invasions. You don't have to deal with the formalities. You don't have to deal with anything, and it's really, really fun, basically because you really don't know what to expect. When you're doing formal matchups, I mean, you know, as a 1v1, you kind of know what to expect, and depending upon how competitive your opponent is, they might start getting sour at you, right? And I've run into that, and that's why sometimes I really get discouraged from formal matchups. Now, I am not saying that, you know, no one ever has a right to say anything, because anytime you're you know, competing against someone, I mean, someone's not going to like it. I don't have a problem with that. Think about it. People complain in basketball. People complain in football. People will always complain with regard to formal matchups. But what I'm saying is, during random invasions, it's almost understood that, I mean, it's basically balls to the wall. Right? So it is very rare that you get someone saying, come on, dude, why'd you have to do that? Or why did you have to do this? Or why did you have to do that? Very rarely do you hear that. So, I mean, that in addition to the excitement that I get from the spontaneity and the invasions is basically the reason why I enjoy randoms as opposed to formal matches. Now, does that mean that I do not have formal matches? Of course not. And any of you guys that are familiar with the channel, you guys would know that because I participate in formal matchups all the time. All the time. But what do I enjoy more? Random invasions. As I've said in the past, if you want to improve your game, try formal matchups. Specifically, fight clubs, tournaments, or being in one of the, you know, quote unquote designated dueling areas. If you want to have fun, become a Dark Wraith, Spirit of Vengeance, or Forest Hunter, and just do whatever you want to do during random invasions. That's how I see it. That's my opinion. Alright, so this is basically the last match of the first video of the 3-part series that I like to title, Whoever's the Fastest Gets to Prey. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first video. Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3. Martyrs Brigade.